Okay, we are a couple minutes past the hour, so I'll kick things off, being cognizant that everybody is in the middle of their work days. So hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, which is going to be on using raw and diverse data for effective crisis response. I'm James Villeneuve. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here at EchoSec Systems. And with our current health crisis, our team felt that this information was especially important to share with the greater retail security and intelligence communities abroad. As an information company, we felt it's our responsibility to get as much of that information as possible out there to help guide what are ever-changing protocols right now, and both as security professionals, but also simply as citizens of the world. I hope you find today's session helpful. I'm expecting it's going to take about 30 minutes, give or take, and we'll allow for some questions at the end. Please feel free to use your webinar interface to ask questions throughout, and I'll do my best to get to them at the end of the session. Given that these are remote work times, I should note that my co-presenter today is my dog, who is sleeping beside me. You may hear him snore and or bark at various times, so my apologies in advance. So let's jump into things and chat a little bit about EchoSec Systems. If you haven't heard of us or you're not currently working with us as a customer, EchoSec Systems is a data discovery and threat intelligence company. So what we do is we offer a web-based platform that provides a critical layer of information to retail security teams, allowing them to detect and often predict critical events. Our clients are the first to know about high-risk situations so that they can act faster. Our platform allows users to search billions of online posts, whether it's from social media, news, and the dark web, to find and mitigate threats as quickly and safely as possible. And as well as brick and mortar retail chains, we also work with some of the world's largest online retailers, government, defense, and finance. It's a bit of a broad spectrum. Photos here, we were at NRF Big Show this year giving demos at our booth to a whole broad spectrum of retail clients. With these corporate security teams, we're working on use cases like executive protection, travel risk monitoring, as well as physical and digital protection of a brand, which we'll jump into it a little bit more today. So objectives for today. And by the end of the 30 minutes, I'm hoping that I will have helped you understand some new perspectives around managing crises in a retail setting. The first objective of mine is to help understand the importance of raw data for effective crisis response. And I'll spend some time on that term as it's a bit of a unique one, but we're going to look at evaluating raw data sources and compare the type of information that you'd receive from finished intelligence, which is often, a third-party service curated information. In most cases, to put it simply, both data delivery methods are necessary for effective context gathering and situational awareness. But for today, we really want to drive home the value of raw data. We're also going to cover how the diversity of potential crises that retailers are facing needs to be mirrored with fast access to a diversity of data sources. This one is incredibly important. Many of the teams that I'm speaking with over the past 6-12 months have expressed that they're struggling to keep up with the growing number of networks that are constantly coming online. At this point in 2020, we need to go beyond well-known social media sites and really start to look at sites like Gab, Mastodon, Telegram, Discord, various Chan boards, as well as dark web and deep web hacker forums to ensure that we're not missing any critical conversations that are taking place. And lastly, we're hoping to provide some insight as to how physical and digital crisis response is directly intertwined. And we're seeing more and more examples of digital threats that are stemming from vulnerabilities caused by physical security distractions. So, a timely topic, we'll talk about some of the cyber threats that have surfaced during the recent COVID-19 crisis. So in terms of how we're going to break this down, I'm not going to spend too much time working through each point, But we are going to be talking about the various forms of crisis, whether it's an active threat like a parking lot shooter, an extreme weather event, or a global health crisis, which is obviously on all of our minds. The response will, of course, be a little different. However, there are common threads between the way that we see our clients handling crisis and emergencies right across the board. We're going to talk about the type of threats that are being posed. So even when the event is something clearly physical, like an earthquake, a thorough response plan needs to include both physical security measures as well as digital and cybersecurity measures. From here, we're going to spend a little bit more time talking about why data diversity is essential, why teams need to gather a dynamic range of data to inform their strategies. There's billions of pieces of publicly available information out there, but to leverage it effectively is to aggregate that data, to filter it and identify key critical information that only pertains to your organization, your people, and your assets. And then from there, a little bit of solution overview. I would be remiss to not talk about EchoSec Systems products and how we address a lot of these needs. So what are the crises that retailers are facing? It's pretty clear a crisis can descend on us in many forms. Top bar here with active threats, a problem like active shooters has been escalating dramatically in the recent years. Active shooter training programs have actually become a staple for medium to large chains. And the National Retail Federation survey in 2019 has given us this percentage of 76.7% of retailers with fewer than 500 stores that invest in an active shooter training program. And we'll get a little bit more into that threat throughout the presentation today. Natural disasters, extreme weather events have an enormous impact on retailers and the communities that they support, as well as global health crises. And that's naturally we'll spend some time today. It's clearly presented a multitude of challenges to retailers and the entire economic system as a whole. Health emergencies cause massive ripple events or effects in a retailer's digital security, physical safety, and supply chains. So we're going to do our best to address some of the ways that retailers are leveraging publicly available information to respond more effectively. Important to note here, there's a lot of topic and talk about physical threats. As we've seen, active shooter situations unfold over the last year. At EchoSec Systems, what we're seeing really aligns with this bottom statistics, which is malicious actors are using this time to take advantage of cybersecurity vulnerabilities. So it's something to really take home from this presentation would be, it's worth a review of your cybersecurity protocols, whether that's phishing scams or email scams. You're going to see a huge spike. Well, there are security vulnerabilities in place during this, largely remote work environment. So for active threats, EchoSec has real-time and historical access to every public tweet, as well as YouTube content, Tumblr, and a variety of popular sites. It's extremely common to find live tweets that provide a wealth of information about what's happening on the ground. By all means, this is a highly valuable data source. What we're seeing here in the bottom left is all about speed to information. So you're able to alert your security HQ as fast as possible, sometimes faster than on-site personnel. And this post, it was shared during the Molson Brewery shooting just a few months ago, where somebody was letting or sharing information about where the shooter was in the factory on social media. So highly valuable, but it's also where we need to start talking about some of the less popular data sources, because critical data is everywhere. As many of the more popular sites are more regulated, and retailers need to have some of these more niche sites on their radar, because this is where the communities are starting to transfer and interact with like-minded individuals. So we shift over to the right, and we see an example from Pastebin. I'm sure we all recall the tragic El Paso shooting that happened in August 2019. The shooter published his manifesto online on an image board site called 8chan, which has gone through a few iterations and is now live as a site called 8kun. When the manifesto was posted, it was removed pretty promptly, but it quickly made its way around the deep and dark web. So the screenshot we're seeing here is the manifesto having then been reshared on a site like Pastebin. So discovering this type of radical content on obscure platforms, well, it's important for investigating incidents after the fact. In my mind, it's equally as important for predicting and preventing future incidents. Not only do you find information about who was posting a physical security threat to your organization, you will find communities that are engaging in like-minded sentiment and maybe posting information about future events or future threats that will take place. Crisis prevention is something that retail security teams manage to do all the time. We just don't hear about it very often because it wasn't a crisis if you're able to respond to it and avoid a serious event like El Paso. Up in the top left, we're seeing a post of a man expressing, terms like supreme gentleman, which is an active shooter reference. Law enforcement can use tools to pivot on this author, build a profile around him, but really what we're seeing here is not every threat or concerning post on social media indicates a brand name or an individual name. We need to get smart at what the key terms are that are being used by threat actors and run searches for those terms as well. So natural disasters are shared widespread across social media, and they're a great way for global intelligence centers to gain a much clearer understanding of what's actually happening, rather than relying solely on on-site reports or news feeds, which often have a several-hour delay. We are working with retail organizations worldwide that are able to keep a real-time pulse on the safety of their staff, their customers, and their greater community from a business intelligence and operations perspective. Whether it's a fire, an earthquake, a storm, they're continuously running searches that are in the background, and they're notified when situational awareness events pick up. If there's an event taking place, they will be notified and be able to react and respond effectively to understand what type of resources they need to deploy to restore safety, restore business ops in the most effective way possible. And then, naturally we get into number 3, which is the global health crisis. So at the time of writing up, my notes and getting ready for this, the world is, dealing head on with the global coronavirus pandemic and, affecting health crisis because of it. So raw data from a variety of sources gives your security team access to critical context related to the pandemic. And it doesn't really matter what you're trying to respond to, whether you're responding to a real life situation or you're securing vulnerable computer networks, data is essential for both. And having fast access to this data enables your team to gain accurate, timely information about what's actually going on in stores. And we're often seeing questions popping up like, which stores are most impacted by panic buying? Are there any confirmed cases in your workforce? You have staff members posting about being sick. And what is the status of global lockdowns, supply chains, and is your store going to be affected by this? What is the customer and employee feedback related to your response? Brand reputation during this time is massive. And if you're not responding in a manner that is thought positively, you're going to hear about it on social media. And then as we start sifting more into deep and dark web, what are the related scams and cyber threats emerging from this? That's a big one for me. And the last one that I wanted to take note of is, how are other retailers responding? Nobody wants to be the last one to the dance here, and having situational awareness and this type of data allows you to see what is the response plan of others in your industry, and is it something you should be following as well? So for COVID-19, we can take a look at location information and a couple examples on the screen here. We're concerned for the health of our families and communities, resilience of local economies and beyond, but there's a slew of other threats that retailers and other organizations need to be made aware of. And in many cases, these threats are very conveniently geolocated, which makes them quickly and easily discoverable using geofencing tools, which we have within our product EchoSec. And other times, we're still able to gather location information about locations in question, whether that's specific cities, a factory or facility. And we can do this by zeroing in on keywords or returning posts based on inferred or predicted location, like a profile location on somebody's Twitter account. Keyword-based queries are especially useful nowadays, as fewer people are geotagging their posts and providers are starting to have a bit of a de-emphasis on geotagging. And I know we have some EchoSec customers attending today, and they'll be used to hearing this from myself or our account management team about the value of keyword-based queries and how much data you gain access to by moving to that from a potential geotag scenario. So sentiment monitoring, another COVID-19 response. And social media is a hotbed for people's views and opinions related to any public topic, any. Sometimes they're completely benign, but sometimes they signal a massive PR issue. Others, they raise a security concern. So here we have a YouTube video that was taken by somebody in their local community who's reporting that a food establishment is still serving customers after the state governor had requested all restaurants be takeout only. This is the type of post that blows up. It's a quick response if you're able to get ahead of it. If you're not, you better believe that this is going to go and be shared right across the board on multiple data sources. We have somebody complaining about price gouging, which I'm sure we've seen far and wide throughout this process. But we're also seeing security risks where our customers are using tools to successfully discover internal employees that are posing risks to their organization, whether that's brand reputation risk or a security risk. So analyzing public sentiment about future events, whether that's a parade, a blowout sale, or anything that is public facing, can provide valuable information while estimating the level of disruption or disorder that might occur during these events. So not always a past facing opportunity here. We can move it forward and search live during events. And my personal interest in COVID-19, where I've spent probably too much time, is the emerging cyber threats. The digital and cyber risks that emerge from a crisis such as COVID-19 are immense. The number of scams that I've seen surface over the past month, frankly, it's been staggering. And organizations across every industry, they're struggling to keep up. Scammers are offering to sell fake cures, vaccines, and advice on completely unproven treatments for COVID-19. They're creating fake shops, fake websites, social media accounts, and email addresses that claim to sell medical supplies that are currently in high demand, like surgical masks, and then pocketing the money. The types of scams, though, that impact you most as a retailer are phishing scams that claim to be made by your company. It's a twofold attack. It's a security risk for your customers, but it's also a reputation risk as this unfolds. Here we see an example of someone recounting their experience getting a phishing email from a large electronics company. They're going into great detail about the fake email and how it almost worked on them. And trust me, they're convincing. We are a security company focused on threat intelligence, and I have almost fallen for these types of scams. They get emailed to you, sometimes even from a corporate domain email. When cyber criminals use your brand to pursue these malicious acts, you've got a huge reputational issue at hand. So by finding them early, you have that rare opportunity to educate your customers, educate your employees, and also inform internal security protocol on how to avoid this propagating or getting worse. So what are the keys to crisis response? At any point in time, retailers must be prepared to respond to a number of possible emergency situations swiftly and effectively. The pillars of effective crisis response in our eyes largely remain the same across the board, regardless of active threat, natural disaster, or health emergency. It's speed to information, quality of information, and situational awareness and context from the data that you're looking at. So the solution, well, it's data aggregation and visualization. That is the first step. So for us at EchoSec Systems, we like to deliver this in a single platform that delivers raw data from hundreds of sources. That includes Beacon and EchoSec, so access to dark web and social media data that allows for real-time searching. Your team can achieve unprecedented speed to information to minimize data and get ahead of crises. You can gain incredible situational awareness by turning raw data into actionable intelligence. What we really like to do is take a security team and teach them the value of raw data compared to finished intelligence, because you can be trained as a team to understand how to respond to this. You know your business best. You know your security risks better than a third-party service. So we want you to be in this system using it and leveraging the features like advanced filters, machine learning, and object detection to be able to understand the threats that are facing your organization. You can gather data from the widest variety of sources available in one platform, and I would challenge anybody out there to find a platform that aggregates this much data, and the fact that we are continuously iterating on that data. In the last year, we've brought in feeds like Telegram, Discord, Gab, and Mastodon based on customer feedback. We receive questions like, Reddit just isn't providing me the same type of security information that I had before because they've shut down a lot of subreddits. It sounds like they've moved on to a site called Rattle. Well, we'll go out and get Rattle. We've done that. And now you get a wider variety of data that is more relevant to threat actors. And taking a look a little bit more about gathering data from multiple areas of the internet, that focuses on sources that are otherwise difficult and time-consuming to navigate. So, while platforms out there like Twitter allow you to jump in and use free data sets like TweetDeck to search information, not every data source allows for that type, and you certainly aren't able to aggregate all of those feeds into one platform. So our goal is to make data more accessible, which hopefully means a single point of access to all sources delivered safely and securely via a standard browser. No installations, no VPN and Tor browser needed. So for dark web, our feeds include marketplaces such as Silk Road, Bruscaloni Market, and Hydra, as well as prominent hacker forums such as Dread, which is definitely worth a look during this COVID-19 timeframe. We're currently accessing 18 social media networks. That includes common ones like Twitter, VK, and YouTube, as well as more niche and decentralized sites like Gab, Mastodon, and OKRU. There's probably a lot of eyebrow raises when you hear some of these feeds, and that's a good thing. It means you should take some time. Feel free to reach out to our team and ask questions, learn more about some of these feeds. We're grabbing paste sites like Pastebin and DeepPaste. I find these incredibly important when we're talking about threats like data breaches. If the information of your team, your customers, your employees is being leaked online, it often takes place on sites like Pastebin and DeepPaste. So all data within our platform is delivered to the end user in a raw form, but what we're doing is we're parsing it and normalizing it to allow for quick navigation. So you're able to jump in and see an immense amount of data. You're provided features to be able to filter that down to relevant data only, and it's presented in a way that is user-friendly. So raw data, I've probably said it 100 times now. What is raw data? Why does it matter? So I just wanted to take a quick pause to talk about what I mean by raw data versus curated data or finished intelligence. And given the massive volume of threat data online, Many threat intelligence companies are focused further down the value chain. They're focused on providing tools and services that deliver you processed, finished intelligence. And the goal here is to allow your organization to respond faster to threats and invest less time and resources in processing and contextualizing raw data. An absolute must. So we're certainly not saying do not do this, but while efficiency should be a top priority, access to raw data is also incredibly important because raw data feeds are malleable. They can integrate directly within your security operations center. So if you're using existing tools, maybe it's a Maltego or a Hunchly, a Splunk, these feeds can integrate directly in for additional analysis. They can play nice with other data sets from within your security operations, and they enable your teams to investigate both ongoing cybersecurity threats as well as threats related to real-world crises like terrorism, radicalization, population movement, pandemics, and weather events. So I kind of noted it before, you know your organization best and you know what threats are facing you best. So we really want to focus on getting the data that can allow for this type of response into your hands as easily as possible. So why speed to information is key. So when retail teams have fast access to relevant data sources, situational awareness and response times happen significantly faster. So the statistics we're looking here are from PricewaterhouseCoopers 2019 Global Crisis Response report. So companies with 5,000 or greater employees are likely to experience one crisis per year. And 40% of those organizations do not have the data required for effective response, which equals 41% are not confident in their ability to gather data quickly enough to respond. So if we're now facing a statistic, certainty that these companies, your companies, are likely to experience a crisis. It's not a matter of if, but a matter of when now. Do you have the data necessary to respond? And do you have the tools that allow you to get that data? So early detection, we've talked about that a few times, of getting ahead of threats. And through EchoSec, we're providing access to full historical data. You can actually go back to the inception of Twitter in 2006 to learn what led to a crisis situation in the first place. So what we're looking at here is a number of posts that are referring to a SARS-like virus in China. The posts were made on December 30th, several days before the public had been informed about the situation. So investigation is huge. If you are facing a threat situation or it has already occurred, opportunities to go in historically and understand what was being posted can give a ton of context in law enforcement investigations, but also how to inform your security protocols moving forward. Active shooter pranks. And post El Paso, we've been working with global retailers across the board on active shooter situations. And what we're seeing is, while there are very real threats that retail organizations are having to respond to, this picks up momentum within these communities, and it often causes an influx in things like prank calls related to active shooter, public movement, and demonstrations. So some retail organizations were having active shooter calls called into their store saying that there was somebody in the parking lot with a rifle. Other stores were actually experiencing citizens walking into the store with open carry rifles, as it is in some areas their right to carry arms. But after a very sensitive and traumatic event like the El Paso shooting, this is the type of information that can quickly unfold from a prank to a real security risk. And when you have real-time data, you can respond effectively before that issue blows up in the public eye or turns south into a more significant security risk. So regardless of the type of crisis, certain elements of effective response stay the same. That is really the summary of what we're trying to drive home here. And what we need to focus on as an organization is speed and efficiency, number one. Whether it's a natural disaster or pandemic, a crisis situation is not the time to be jumping around from Twitter to Reddit to the news and back again. And for fast decision making, you need real-time information, and you need it to be delivered for you in a manner which you're not having to go out and search for it. Situational awareness, incredibly important for achieving situational safety. So again, that applies to any type of emergency. You need to have clear contextual understanding of what is happening on the ground. One of my favorite assets to the EchoSec platform is actually the SnapMaps feed, which is, maybe not as interactive as some of the other data sources, but oftentimes you'll see a notification come in like an active shooter situation, a fire. If we're zeroing in on a situation like the London Bridge shooting that happened several months ago, users are very quick. Maybe it's an indication of the times that we're living in, to stream, to share information, boots on the ground, and having access to real-time feeds, both text and video, gives you a clear context of what is happening. And then to truly achieve, the nirvana of crisis response, you need to be reviewing a variety of intelligence sources that verify what is being talked about is actually what is happening. And that is another level of having a platform that takes the data and allows you to sift on top of it, to filter down, narrow out redundant data sources or spam, and also bring in data sources where some of these communities are sharing sentiment, whether it's cybersecurity threats or violent threats, with like-minded individuals in a context where they gain a false sense of security. So from here, you gain true context into some of the threats that are going to be posed to your organization. And I think that's really the summary that we're trying to drive home here today about crisis response. So we're going to jump into some questions. And before we jump into questions, I just wanted to make note, we've got quite a lot of new faces looking at the attendee list here today. I've got our fantastic sales team also joining in. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to sales@echosec.net, or just jump onto our website and use our contact form. If you're interested in getting a discount on our platforms, please feel free to email us or come through our contact form in the next hour, and we'd be happy to provide a 10% discount on either EchoSec or Beacon licenses that you decide to purchase moving forward. So let's jump into the question and answer period, and I'll take a look at what we've got coming in for questions. Okay, so first question that's come in is, if an active shooter posts a manifesto online, how do I use this information if they don't reveal a location or specific target? It's a really good question, and certainly one that's taken our team a lot of time to understand where these actors are posting and what is the content of the post. And there's a couple notes that we drive home to our clients. The first is referring back when we were mentioning a gentleman type query related to active shooters, is what are the keywords being used by these individuals? We provide pre-filter lists, so lists of keywords that you can add to your searches related to topics like active shooters. So that's a great way to quickly use keywords that are related to these topics. Once we start looking at sites like Chan boards, an indicator of intent is often reusing the same string of text over and over and over again. So if we're monitoring Chan boards for queries like shoot, kill, attack, you might see a query against your organization, don't go to school tomorrow, don't go to Walmart tomorrow. And if you copy and paste that in and run a search, you'll see oftentimes that real intent is shared across 4chan, 8kun, Gab, and other sites like Nchan, which means there's something here. It's something worth responding to. how do I find out about a security attack against my organization if criminals aren't talking about it on social media or the dark web? Yeah, again, that's a really good question to ask. There's a few different ways. And again, I'd circle back to, if attackers or threat actors aren't explicitly naming your organization online, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not targeting you. So getting smart with your keyword searches is always a great way to start it off. Another opportunity is to look at data breaches. So we actually have a data breach repository within our dark web product Beacon, which allows you to see your organization's corporate domains and where they've been implicated in a data breach. Not only that, we're able to show you what compromised information was shared online. These are repositories that are shared on the dark web. So it might not necessarily mean that there's a cyber attacker on Dread sharing a plan to attack your organization. What they might have done instead is simply posted a list of your corporate emails online or sold them on a marketplace in a financial transaction, which you will have to respond to at a later date. So getting ahead of those through data breach repositories is a great strategy. The last question that I have here, unless any others come in, is, aren't finished intelligence tools more efficient than having to process raw data? We've talked about that a little bit today, and I really do, often drive home the point of neither is a silver bullet solution. An effective security operations center should always be taking advantage of multiple tools in multiple aspects of data. So finished intelligence tools are delivered by a third-party service where somebody has taken a look at your organization and come forward saying, these are the threats you need to respond to. What they're not necessarily doing is getting an aggregation platform like EchoSec or Beacon, searching through millions, if not billions of data points, and delivering that to you saying, there's a variety of conversations about your organization. Do you think these are threats? So oftentimes you're missing out on critical information that will unfold into a threat against your organization by only dealing with finished intelligence tools. That being said, efficiency-wise, absolutely great tool to have a quick context of what type of major threats are facing you. And the raw data side, more on an investigative and an analyst perspective, and providing a lot more value. And it looks like that's it. Oh, okay, just one more question that's popped in here. Are EchoSec and Beacon separate? A really good question. So we do offer a platform solution where your unique login credentials can gain access to either product. That's EchoSec with access to the 18 social media sources, and Beacon with access to hundreds of deep and dark web sources. That being said, we completely understand that every team has different objectives and different budgets or priorities right now. So you are able to access either platform or both, depending on what your requirements are. So always a good question to ask our team as you come through, which platforms you think would work best for you. And we'll probably have the opportunity to let you know our thoughts based on your use case. Can we use, so now they're starting to come in, can we use an API? Are you GDPR and PIPEDA compliant? So two questions in one. Yes, we do offer up an API to our customers. It's the EchoSec Systems Platform API. And in doing so, we're delivering data to customers from what we've identified as the most prominent threat landscape data sources we have. So that's data feeds like Reddit, Rattle, Gab, 4chan, 8kun, NChan, Pastebin. I can go on and on. About 12 different unique data sources that can be fed directly into an existing security operations platform that you're using. Another unique feature about raw data. As it relates to GDPR and PIPEDA compliance, again, a fantastic question. If you've worked in the data discovery or social media monitoring space for several years, you'll have likely seen organizations come and go in this space, largely related to their lack of compliance and privacy compliance for that matter. So EchoSec Systems is both GDPR, PIPEDA, and I believe it's CEDA compliant, California's privacy compliance. We work directly with our data providers to ensure that all customer use cases align with their terms of service. Next question being, can you explain pivoting a little more based off of the dark web discovery like a manifesto? It's a good question. Pivoting is a term that we use or a feature that we have within our products that allow you to run searches based off of entities or information that we've extracted from a post. So in the instance of a dark web manifesto post on an image or Chan board, information like author name, email address, phone number, credit card, any sort of identifying information that we're able to pick up, we will extract and show you what has been pulled out. Are there names involved? Are there email addresses or phone numbers? And by running a pivot search, it will actually engage a new search on this information. Something that I found really interesting during the COVID-19 crisis was marketplace posts. Users have a severe false sense of security. They're sharing their WhatsApp with their actual area code and email address. So not only do we see somebody selling a vaccine for COVID-19 on the dark web, we now know that they're based in Atlanta. We have their email address, and by pivoting off of their pseudonym or username, we can find their other usernames on sites like Reddit and Twitter. So a really excellent way to continue learning more beyond one post. There's so much more intelligence and analysis that goes hand in hand with finding that set of relevant data. Great question. And just one more I've got here. Right, so there's an opportunity here to use Maltego, and we're getting questions based on how we interact with some of these other products. So we've mentioned the API. Our products also have an export functionality. So some of this entity information like name and IP address, you're able to extract from our platform and ingest into other analysis tools like Maltego. So that allows you to enumerate location data, identify additional usernames, or even find out information like where this email address has been breached using Maltego's Have I Been Pwned plugin. So yeah, it's a great question in terms of how we interact with some of these platforms. There are multiple ways to send data from EchoSec or Beacon into them. And depending on what software you're using, each has some unique value that can be added on top of the data you get from EchoSec Systems. And we've hit our slowdown point for questions, but I appreciate them flooding in there. It's always nice to get some engagement. So thank you everybody so much for jumping on with me today. To learn a little bit more about retail security response and how raw data plays such an important role in the work that you're all doing. Again, feel free to jump onto our website or send us an email at sales@echosec.net, and we'd be happy to answer any additional questions and provide all of our attendees a 10% discount on subscriptions to either of our products. So thanks again and have a wonderful afternoon.